Hey everyone, hope you're having a great day. Today we are going to get deeper into the process of choosing a political science research topic. And so, if you recall from the first week of class, from our first discussion of building the airplane at 30,000 feet, as I said, we are going to be engaging in a very specific type of research in this class that is pure causal empirical research. And by that, I am referring specifically to three sort of definitional aspects of our research. First, of course, is the idea that it's pure. That is to say that it's performed agnostically. And by agnostically, I'm not talking about some kind of religious commitment. I'm not using the word that way, right? I mean instead that we're not trying to come at this research project with any kind of preconceived notion about what we want to happen, essentially. We're trying to understand the world, and we're not trying to sort of put our finger on the scales. We certainly might come to our research project with an understanding or a prior of how the world works. And that's really important, and it's very good that we do that. But we're not trying to motivate our research question in a way that, again, tips the scale or biases us towards one conclusion. That's not pure research at all, right? That's research that is subject to certain kinds of biases. So pure in terms of its agnosticism towards essentially the conclusion that we're drawing. It's also going to be empirical, by which I mean that we're going to be eventually gathering data, both quantitative and qualitative, on our topic in order to actually figure out if the hunch we have about the world around us has support in this real world observation. So it's empirical. It's something that we can sink our teeth into, that we can study from an objective sort of scientific perspective. And then finally, causal. And this is perhaps the most important and the most sort of difficult to grasp aspect of this entire thing. We're proposing a relationship in this research question. It's not just descriptive research. I think an example I used in the first module was the patterns of migratory birds at UMBC. That's a great research question. It's one that I think that a lot of ornithologists or environmental scientists at UMBC might be interested in finding out the answer to. We might want to know what are the birds, right? What's the lay of the land out there? What kinds of birds come to campus? But instead of a research question like that, which is simply trying to answer the what is question, we're trying to answer the why question. And so this causal relationship is one that sometimes trips students up a little bit as they're trying to devise a topic. I think the reason why that is that we often think of topics as fairly descriptive, as about the what question, right? I want to know about fill in the blank, right? I think an example I used in the first module was civil wars. I want to know what's up with civil wars, right? I want to know what's up with pet ownership. Does pet ownership have some kind of political component to it, right? I want to know, who Trump supporters are. I want to know, why some countries have more fossil fuel emissions than others, right? And so that, again, it gets us close to a why question. But I want to propose essentially two possible strategies for you to help you, like sort of templates for proposing good topics. And so I think when we're proposing topics, we want to think about them as being able to slot into what I call open questions. And so I want to be really, really, really clear here. Open effect questions or open cause questions that we'll talk about in a second are not research questions or RQs. RQs are going to be really important pieces of the research process that we're going to contend with in just a couple of modules. So hold tight, we're not there yet, okay? We've got to think, first of all, about our topics. So these questions are not fully fledged research questions. There's a big caveat here. But they're designed to get us closer to that research question, which is going to be combining essentially a cause and an effect into one fully fledged question. And so these open questions, which again, not research questions, these are sort of training wheel exercises, help us to think about this by, first of all, we can think about open effect questions, asking the following: what causes variation in blank? And blank is our topic, okay? What causes variation in blank? And so, again, I'm thinking about, civil wars, the political ramifications of pet ownership, senators' roll call votes for climate bills or whatever, right? All these different topics are floating around. But if I can lock them into this type of format, I'll be able to maybe better assess whether they'll be a good fit for this course in particular. So here are some examples. What causes variation in individuals' attitudes towards vaccines? I want to know, right? Are some individuals skeptical towards vaccines, or others supportive of vaccines, or some rushing to get vaccines and others hesitant? What might cause this relative hesitancy or relative willingness? How about countries' investment in green tech? Why do some countries invest a lot in green tech and other countries invest little? What causes variation in Americans' levels of social media use, right? Why are some people constantly on their phones, right, checking Facebook? Why are they constantly liking and disliking and getting into fights with their friends or their, internet acquaintances on Facebook or on TikTok or whatever? What causes variation in states' average healthcare costs? Why do some Americans spend a lot on healthcare? Why do other Americans not spend a lot on healthcare? What causes variation in European nations' levels of trade with China, right? Why are some nations engaged in a tremendous amount of trade with China? Why are other European nations reticent to trade with China? What causes variation in UK citizens' attitudes towards Brexit? Why are some supportive of Brexit? Why are some maybe regretful of having voted for Brexit? What are UK citizens' current contemporary attitudes towards Brexit now that they're feeling some of the ramifications of that decision? So all of these are examples of topics, right? We can take the question mark off. I'm interested in individuals' attitudes towards vaccines. I'm interested in countries' investment levels in green tech. I'm interested in Americans' levels of social media use. I'm interested in states' average healthcare costs. We can start to see, right? This is a topic that's being posed as a question simply because we've used this little shortcut or heuristic to help us help guide us towards a well-formulated topic. Now, one other little pro tip that you're going to see here, and in fact something that we're going to get used to talking about in later modules, is the fact that every single one of these topics, it comes baked in, right, includes some understanding of what it is that we're talking about. So individuals, countries, Americans, states, European nations, UK citizens, this is what will eventually come to be called the unit of analysis in our studies. And so we're already thinking about this. And so if you've got a topic where you're thinking about, oh yeah, I want to know about green tech, right? Try to build this out. Try to think about, are we thinking about the amount of green tech across countries, across states, across time, something like that, right? How do we think about comparing? Because that's the third piece of this that I think is really highlighted by this kind of open question. And that is the idea that what causes variation necessitates us to think about comparisons. Comparing cases where there's a lot of something and cases where there's a little of something. And that's going to be super critical to our causal research, because we can't do causal research unless we've got essentially cases for which there's a lot of something and cases of which there's a little bit, and we can make some kind of comparison. It's a very sort of a natural kind of experimental logic. Not all of us are going to be doing experiments per se in this course. Much of the research we're going to be doing is observational in nature, as we'll see. But it's still the same kind of logic where we want to compare conditions in which essentially there's a lot of something, somebody receives a high dose of a medicine and a placebo or control, or where somebody receives a low dose or no doses of something, and then compare the effects. That's the same logic here. So in our topic statement, we're still already thinking about what's ahead. And that is the idea that we're thinking always about a topic for which we can imagine that there's variation. In some places and in some cases, there's a lot of something, and in some places and in some cases, there's a little of something. So this is this is already an extremely sort of steep narrowing of what's possible as a topic. And I'm sure that many of you who have already come up with some topics are thinking about the need to retool this stuff to try to sort of fall into, more naturally this kind of a phrasing. But that's not all, okay? If you're looking at this and you're thinking, oh, what causes variation in something, right? Maybe you're thinking like, I've already been brainstorming about topics, but I'm really more interested in how these things have some kind of effect, but I don't know what the effect is yet. That's okay. That's totally fine. You could think about phrasing this as what we might call an open cause question, which is another way of phrasing it. And again, this blank is exactly the same thing. The topic goes in the blank. Does variation in your topic have any meaningful effects? it's up to you later to think about, to brainstorm, to theorize what those potential effects might be. And so you'll be interested to see that I've actually created a series of examples that, oh wait, they're the exact same examples. These are the exact same topics, but we could think about them instead of being what causes variation in them. We could think about, do these things, does high or low levels of these things cause something else to happen? So, for example, individuals' attitudes towards vaccines. Does this cause them to do something, right? If you have skepticism towards vaccines or low levels of trust, does this make you more likely to vote a certain way relative to somebody who has high levels of trust? What about countries' investment in green tech? If you're a country that's heavily invested in green tech, does that cause you to behave a certain way relative to if you didn't invest in a lot of green tech? How about Americans? This is a good one. This is a good one that's a good cause kind of statement. What about social media junkies? Do they behave differently than people who are totally off social media in terms of their political behavior? Great question, something I want to know about. How about this one? States' average healthcare costs. In states where healthcare is super expensive, do these people have some kind of political beliefs or behaviors that differ from states where healthcare is cheap? That's a great question. How about European nations that trade with China? If these nations trade a lot with China, do they do something differently in their domestic or foreign politics relative to countries that are basically not trading with China whatsoever? I think a big corollary is, who else are they trading with if they're not trading with China? And how about this? UK citizens' attitudes towards Brexit. If you're a full-fledged, full-throated Brexit supporter in the present moment, what are you doing now politically? What kinds of effects does that Brexit commitment have on your political thinking? And so you can really see how, again, going back and forth between both of these kinds of questions, either one works for all of these, but we haven't put the whole picture together yet. We simply proposed a topic that is germane for us to brainstorm about the possible either causes of something or the possible effects. And that is, I think, another really good hallmark of a good topic, is that it could probably go either way. But generally, we've come to the table, we've brainstormed about this. We've come to these topics with a fairly specific linkage in mind. There's some reason out there why we've discovered our interest in this topic. It may be that you've just thought about it a little bit. You're sort of like, oh, this is a political issue that's on my mind recently. It's up to you to probe that a little bit more and think about, okay, then, do I want to know why some people or countries or states or counties or whatever are high or low in this kind of property? Or am I more interested in what kinds of effects does this thing have? Because the answer to that question, whether we're interested in this topic as a cause or as an effect, is going to inform the way that we structure our research a little bit. Specifically because the effect, right, this kind of thing, right, what causes variation in these things, that's going to form the sort of backbone of our RQ, our research question. And so it may be that your research question looks a little different if you're coming at the topic from this perspective instead of the other one. So stay tuned for all of that. Both of these kinds of approaches to the topic are totally valid. But at the end of the day, you'll be stripping out this kind of thing and simply thinking about, take out the question marks, right? And simply proposing a topic that conforms to these properties. Eventually, your research question is going to bring together a cause that you've thought of and an effect. Again, as I've just mentioned, for now, we only need to have one. But it is important, and I think very valuable, to keep our destination in mind. Keep in mind the idea that eventually we will arrive at a well-stated RQ that proposes a cause and an effect. So, for example, I could think about, do individuals' attitudes towards vaccines influence their support for Democrats in the 2020 election? Does countries' investment in green tech influence their or we could do it the other way. Does right-wing parties' share of seats in parliament influence their investment in green tech? Does Americans' level of social media use influence their general anxiety? Right? Huge kinds of questions. But all things where either on the front or the back end, we can propose a fully fledged research question that brings together two possible things. But for now, all we're interested in is just the one. So that's all I have to say about this right now. Hopefully this helps you. In the next module video, we're going to get even further into this, and we're going to think very carefully about some pitfalls, some issues that could you could encounter as you're seeking to create these really tight, really well-defined topic statements. So follow me on to the next video. I'll see you in just a moment.